Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today, Lemesechtas Rosh Hashana daf Hey. We are going to begin on Hey Amud Aleph, the third line from the top. We were learning the connection between Chag HaMatzos, Chag HaShavuos, and Chag HaSukkos, and it came to teach us that, first of all, when it came to the din of Shavuos, there's Tashlumin, that if you didn't bring the carbon chagiga on the first day, you have the 7 days, even on Shavuos, for the makeup. And the other thing we learned out as we completed yesterday's daf was the requirement of Lina, that not just on Pesach, but also on Sukkot, that after Yom Tov you don't just leave, you have to actually stay there that night. On this, the Gemara says, V'tana Kama of Reb Shimon ben Elazar, Tashlum Latzeres Menolahu. How do they know that when it comes to Shavuos, if you didn't bring the carbon during Shavuos, you still have a 7-day period? So Nafgahum the Tani Rabbi Bar Shmuel. The Tani Rabbi Bar Shmuel, we went out from the following drasha. Amr Torah Mani Yamim V'Kadesh Chodesh. The Torah says that we count days, as the pasuk says, Ad Chodesh Yamim, and then after that we get to a month, we're Mekadesh the month, and we bring various karbanos on that month, on Rosh Chodesh. So too, Menei Yomim v'Kadesh Atzeres. So too, we count, as we know, days, and then eventually we get to the holiday of Shavuos. That's what we do. We count the Omer, Sfiras Omer. So now we continue with this drasha. Ma Chodesh u'Menuyav Avatzeres u'Menuyav. So just like a month, it's according to its number. So as we said, we count a day to get to a month. So too, when it comes to Shavuos, we give you a week to be able to continue to make up bringing the carbon. So where it says 1 second, Ema Seres Chad Yoima, maybe it just means you have 1 day. So Merava Atu what? Atzeres Yoime Maninan, Shui Lo Maninan. Do we only count days? No, we know when it comes to Sfiras Omer, we also count weeks. V'Yamar Mitzvim Nuni Yoima Mitzvim Nuni Shavuye. The Abod Chag Shavuos Ksiv. It says the word Shavuos. Shavuos means week, and therefore it says weeks. So therefore it's telling you that you have Tashlumin the entire week to bring that carbon. And then we mentioned in yesterday's daf the different karbanos in which if a person delays bringing them, that there's a violation of Bal Ta'acher. And we discussed exactly how long Bal Ta'acher is. Is it 1 regel, 2, 3? Is it Kesidron, Shulkasin, or is it Sukkos? So the question is that one of the karbanos that is mentioned was Karban Pesach. Well, Pesach bar mikra baragolim who? Pesach zimni kaviyale. It's a set time that you bring a carbon Pesach. How is it possible that there's an issue of Bal Ta'acher? It shouldn't apply to the Karban Pesach, since it's only that one time. It's supposed to be makrib on Erev Pesach, and if you weren't makrib it, that's it. Of course, there's Pesach Sheni. But the point is that how do we find an issue of Bal Ta'acher, let's say, of 3 regolim? So Gemara gives 2 answers. One answer is, you're right, Omer Rav Chisda, Pesach K'nei Nitzbah. Pesach was just coupled together with everything else, because when we mention Pesach, we usually include Meiser, Behema, and Bechor. They're usually together, so therefore, even though it's true Pesach really doesn't apply to Bal Ta'acher, it's nonetheless it's mentioned. Rav Sheshes said, no, my Pesach, Shalmi Pesach. We're referring to the Shlomim of a carbon Pesach. What does that mean? So Rashi says, V'shlo kar bizmanai. Let's say a carbon Pesach in general, if you don't bring it during its time, it has the din of a Shlomim. So in this situation, imagine Avad, says Rashi, you lost your carbon Pesach, and therefore you replace it with another one. All of a sudden, L'schaper ba'acher, hu nasa Shlomim. Now you find that other carbon, your original one. So the din is that you have 3 regolim, or based on whatever the din is, for bringing the carbon of this shlomim. But we call it Pesach because it's the Shalmi Pesach because it was linked to the original Pesach. So we already mentioned shlomim. So where it says, yeah, Tana Shlomim haboy machmas Pesach, but Tana Shlomim boy machmas atzman. 2 different types of shlomim: regular shlomim, and which is din Bal Ta'acher, and also the shlomim which is connected to Pesach. So what's the difference? Mechamas Pesach also, since the Shalmei Pesach is linked to the carbon Pesach as we continue to Hayamid Bays, so therefore we would think Pesach Damu. You would think it has the same din as the carbon Pesach. Says Rashi, Uva Regel Rishon Yaver Lehen. Maybe even one regel you violated. Kamash Milan, that when it comes to the Shalmei Pesach, the din is that you have, again, according to some opinions, 3 regel. So now the Gemara just wonders, Minhan Mili. How do we know, says Rashi, that Kol Hanach the Tanya b'Masnis L'il Hikabal Tachar? How do we know that in fact it's true by all the different things that were mentioned and stipulated in yesterday's daf, that there's a violation of all these different karbanos and things about Ta'achar if it wasn't brought in the proper time? So we derive it from the following pasuk, the Tanabana. The pasuk says, Kisidor Neder, when a person makes a neder. Now, Ainli El Neder. I only know of the pasuk because it says specifically neder. A neder is when a person says Hari Alai, you take it upon yourself to bring carbon. Nedaba Minayin, when a person says Hari Zu, a person specifically speaks about this animal, in which that situation, let's say the animal gets lost or stolen, you're not chai b'charusa. So never kan neder v'never l'hoon im neder o nedaba. Elsewhere, neder and nedaba are linked. Therefore, maluho nedaba imoi yavkan nedaba imoi. So therefore, the issue about ta'achar is not just by nedarim, but also by nedabas. And then the pasuk continues and says, L'Hashem Elokecha. So what is that referring to? That you're making certain things designated to Hashem. So Elu ha-domim ha-arachin v'ha-charamim v'akdeishais. These are the different things that are designated to Kodesh B'nei so they're all given to Hashem. Because the Kohanim don't have any rights to them, because they're being specifically given and earmarked for B'nei Kabayis, for the upkeep of the Beis Hamikdash. So therefore, because of that, that's why the pasuk says La Hashem Elokecha, and therefore that also, if a person doesn't quickly bring their carbon, or in these cases, the Erchin, the Choram Nakdeshos, then they valid Bal Ta'achar. And then it says Lo Sa'achar L'Shalmai. You shouldn't delay in bringing it. Who V'loi Chilufa. It, and not its exchange, which we're going to interpret exactly what that's referring to. We'll see in the Gemara soon. Ki Darshid Rishenu, because a person will be seeked out. These are all the different karbanos that was a chayiv that you had to do because you sinned. There's some guilt offerings, etc. When it says Hashem Elokecha, that's referring to giving charity and meiser. Why? So Rashi says the Hakra Yisir, who this is extra. The Havilim Mechtav Ki Darshan Rishenu Kvar Hashem Kosovul Malo. It already says to Hashem. So why does it say again Hashem Elokecha? So it's coming for this drasha. Rasu Sedakus Masu Shekos Behen Shem Zeh. V'Luchat Tia Sedak Lifnei Hashem Elokecha. Because the pasuk says V'Yachalta Lifnei Hashem Elokecha Masu Degoncha. So when it talks about Sedak and Meiser, it talks about Hashem Elokecha. Ubechor, as well as to the Bechor. Imach Zeh Leket Shechel Peya. When the pasuk says Mimach from you, that's referring to Leket Shechel Peya, that are portions to give over to the ani, as the pasuk also says Es Ani Imach. So therefore, almost like a Gzer Shava, that's the link. Therefore, when it comes to Leket Shechel Peya, you have to make sure it's given properly to the aniyim on time. And obitu is a sin. But your carbon is not a sin. Which means, as Rashi says, Ein ha-carbon nifsal bekach. Even though, let's say, you violate Bal Ta'achar, so it doesn't mean that there's like a psul haguf on the carbon. You can still bring the carbon even after you violated Bal Ta'achar. Amar. So now the Gemara is going to explain this a little bit more. Lo sa'achar shalmo hu b'loi chalifa. Chalufi demai. What is that referring to, this exchange? If we're talking about the exchange of a carbon ola or shlamim, so mikriv karbe, so mimakriv, says Rashi, kagon avda, let's say you lost your carbon ola, v'hivr shacheres tachteha, and then you find it the original one, so nimsas rishayim neschaperba. Well, you find it, so, and now you're mechaper with the other one, mikriv karbe, v'kima de karava, harihi carbon atzma, Ushama Krinabe. Notice you can still bring this carbon. So Ichalufi Chatas Lamisa Azla. If let's say it's referring to in exchange for a carbon chatas, we know that that animal, because there's chamish chatos, 5 carbonos, which are carbon chatos, that which will go to misa, and one of them is it was keeper valeha. If let's say the owner was already achieved kapara, so then this animal you can no longer bring as a carbon chatas. So it can't be referring to a carbon chatas either. So if it's an ol or shlomim, you can be makar of them. It's like ketzel mizbeach and oila, and the chatas again you can't bring. Rather, it goes out to die. Lamisazla. Ela mai chilufi toida. It's referring to the exchange of a carbon toda. So on this Rashi says, "Kamashmuan al zevach toida chalus toida teuna lechem." We know that the Thanksgiving offering also requires breads, v'lo chilifasa, but not the replacement. V'lo timurasa tu'unin lechem. However, let's say you do a tamura, you say, I want this carbon to be a toda, and not this one. We know the din of tamura is that it's chal, that it falls onto the other animal, but the first animal doesn't lose its kedusha. However, it doesn't require lechem. So maybe that's what it's coming to tell you. Only the original one is required to have lechem, the breads, but the 40 breads, but not when it comes to if you do some form of exchange, if it got lost, etc. So maybe that's the chiddush of what we're talking about, chelufi taida. Tani Rabbi Chia, taida she nisavra b'timurasa. Let's say a toda got mixed up with its tamura. Umesa achsnehen, one of them dies. You don't know which one's which. So chaverta ein lo takana. Its friend does not have a remedy, because again, since the other one requires you have to bring lechem, the other one doesn't require the lechem. You don't know which one it is. So heichi levin, what you do? So likrave, you should be makravit. V'likrav lechem b'hadah, and you should also be makrav lechem by it. Dilma timuri, because maybe it was the timur that died. Likrava b'lo lechem dilma toidahi. You should be makrav it without bread, because maybe the one that died was the toda, and therefore this new one doesn't require it. So therefore you almost make some type of a condition that if this animal that's in front of me that I'm being makrib is the replacement, so these breads mean nothing. But if it's the original one, then these breads have chashivas. Kivan the labas hakrava. This toda, if it's not something we're supposed to be makrivi, krol imyute lumli. So then why would you think that a person would potentially be over the violation of Baal Ta'acher? It's hard to understand. Why would a person make such a thought? So Amrav Sheshis Olam Yamute Chalufi Oil Shlama. So it can't be that again we're talking about this carbon toda, you're a makravit. So if you're a makravit, then where is Baal Ta'acher? So the whole question is again, do you bring lechem, or how do you bring the lechem, and what do you do? But that's not what we're talking about, chalufe. So it must be coming again, only muti chalufi ol v'shlama. So the question is, what's the problem? You can always bring them. So v'hachaba ma'askinen kigun she'abru lehashnei regalim. This is what it's referring to, and this is going to be question 5. So this is going to be answered in number 5. Kigun she'abru lehashnei regalim. You had this animal, and you were going to bring as a shlam or as an oil. And 2-week holidays go by, and you know you got to bring it by the next holiday, or else you're over about Ta'acher. Bahuma, and all of a sudden this animal develops a mum. And because it developed a mum, so obviously you can't bring it as a carbon anymore. So what are you supposed to do? V'chilu. You're supposed to be machalit onto al-acher, and another animal. The upper love regel echad, and now one regel passes by. You would think, since it's coming from the strength of the original carbon, command Avrla Gimel Regalim Dami Kamashmuan. You would think that three regalim passed by. They did pass by. They passed by from me, but they didn't pass by from this animal. Because the original animal, 2 regalim went by. Then it developed a mum, and then I put a new animal as an exchange, so you are now given a brand new 3 regalim. Okay. So again, Kamash 1. I were mayor the army kivan she'ever love regel echad, arba bal ta'achar ma'akim emar. So that only makes sense that svara, according to the Bishat bal ta'achar, is only after 3 regalim. However, you only hold it, but you're going to be violating bal ta'achar by 1 regel. So then, how do you explain this case? So Rabbi Hachma'askin and Kigon Shehumim b'toicha regel. Let's say, even according to the Shita of Meir, you have that whole regel. What happens if, let's say, in the middle of the regel is when it developed a mum? The chilvo, therefore, you exchange it and put it onto another animal. The yerba of a regel. Now the whole regel has completed. Now, it's like the whole regel has passed by. And therefore, again, even according to him, you're still going to be granted another new regel. And then it says it'll be a sin to you, a little bit carbon chachet. It's not going to be a sin as far as the carbon, namely that, as we said, there's nothing wrong with the carbon. You would think that the year has passed. It has the same status as psuli mikdashim, for example, like a balmum, that it's something which is a carbon and then becomes puzzle. V'yipasel Talmud Loimer v'yachaltu lefnei Hashem alkecha ma'is d'gadach v'tirashcha v'siracha. So it talks about that you will eat in front of Hashem your oils, wine, grain, b'charis b'karcha v'tzayncha, your cattle and your sheep. Makish b'chor ma'aser. Ma ma'aser in anisol mishano lachaverta. When it comes to ma'aser, we say it doesn't get puzzle from one to the next, as the pasuk says in Rashi, Mikse shon shanim, im shiyam asraisav shana rishaynu shniya, af b'chor inu nisel mishana l'chaverta. In other words, we already have a pasuk that shows this din, that if you didn't bring, if a person didn't bring the carbon at the proper time, you violate bal ta'acher, it doesn't become puzzle. So why do we need this pasuk to tell you that? So it's the lab bar hartsahu. Maybe you would think it's only referring to when it comes to a bechor, because it's not a bar hartsah. It's not a carbon regarding appeasement, as Rashi says, imla kapara, imla darai, al kadashim livnei hartsah. A carbon which is to ask for appeasement, ninhu emaloi liratsu. Maybe it will not work. It will not appease. Kamash 1. So in other words, it's coming to say the din is not only when it comes to a carbon such as bechor, but any other carbon, the same din would apply. That there's no psul on the carbon, even though you violated bal ta'acher. Rakati, as we continue to vav al mid ben azai nafka. We learn that out from ben azai. How's that? The sign ben azai yoimer oiso. Matal malor. What is that teaching? Lifish nema the pasuk says l'sachor shalmai. It says you're not supposed to delay in your karbanos, so shomei ani af ma'achar nidra b'bal yiratza. You would think that if a person delays in bringing neder, he's going to also violate bal yiratza. Talmud loimer oso b'lo yiratza v'ein ma'achar nidroi b'lo yiratza. The only time we say that the carbon is lo yiratza, is not accepted, it's not good, in which is regarding the isser pigul, that if a person has an improper machshava during certain times of the avoda of that carbon, so that carbon becomes puzzle, so it's lo yiratza. However, that's only there by pigul is it lo yiratza. However, when it comes to the delaying, that carbon is still acceptable. So again, we already know this din, not just by a taida, not just by a bechor, by all karbanos. Elo, rather we say it's a totally different explanation as we look in question 6. As we're going to see, v'lo b'ishta chachet. My kamashman kra le'nit ishto. So let's see. Question 6 is going to be answered right now. So b'chachet v'lo b'ishta chachet. It's a sin on you, and nothing will happen to your wife. Your wife. What did your wife do? She's not the one who did anything wrong. Salka da'ita chamina. You would think. Hoyel v'yam Rabbi Yochanan. V'itei mar b'lezer. Ein ishta sholad meis. A woman, a person's wife doesn't die. El im kain mavakshim mimenu mamoin. The Einlo, in a situation where we're mavakish from them money, right? We're basically designating money to hektish. and the ein lo, and we really don't have the money to give, or we don't give it. Shenemer im ein lecha was shalim. If you don't have what to give, so lama yikach mishkavcha mitachtecha. Why are you taking this sleeping materials from underneath you? So just like you would think, now when it comes to other violations, that when a person does something wrong, that the wife actually gets punished. So you would think maybe also over here. The din is no. The ein ish no meisa ba'avain debal ta'acher. Kafi shemeisa ba'avain she'ein lo klal. And the avain, when he just doesn't have it all, and like he's pretending that he has what he doesn't have, which is an interesting word. Like, why is your wife being punished? So there's a psychological idea that a man wants to feel as a provider, and therefore he doesn't want to give his wife the impression that he doesn't have, right? So it's on some level, even though he was wrong for doing it, it's because he's married, which caused him to end up pretending that he has more money than he really has. So therefore, it's not that it's her fault, but she has an element and an involvement in his improper thought process. But that's not when it comes to Baal Ta'acher, because you have it, and you delayed bringing it, so that's something which is on you, and it's not going to be on your wife. I'm going to stop here. Let's see a couple questions. Question TA 19. Lo Sa'achu Shalmai. Hu V'lo Chalifa. So, Be'eze Oifen, this is really the exact same question in question 5. Be'eze Oifen, Ma'ayri Ma'kamash Mozel, Mandi Erba Baltach, Gimel Regalim. So again, it's referring to Ol Shlamim, Shabar Beis Regalim, Ganamum, and you were Mechaled onto another animal, Kamash with the money Gimel Regalim, Mishas Hachilul, V'lo Metchila. That it only goes 3 Regalim for that particular animal. And therefore we don't say, oh, it reverts back to the original one. Okay. Question. I don't know if I did this one. Okay. TB. We'll see that next one. Next up. TB 20. Ma dinim shel chalufi oil shlamim inyan bal ta'acher. I think this is an exactly identical question. Question 20. Harihim carbon la'atzman inyan bal ta'acher. Atkan.